When you grow up as the daughter of a superstar, the world sees your last name first, and your heart last. For Riley Burruss, being Kandi's daughter wasn't just a title, it was a shadow she lived under every day. But beneath that shadow was a little girl trying desperately to be seen, not as a celebrity's child, but simply as herself. From the moment Riley was born, cameras were there. Lights. Flashbulbs. Whispers about what she should be, what she might become. But the little girl behind the fame wasn't ready for that spotlight. She was quiet, thoughtful, often retreating into herself. It wasn't always obvious. But slowly, Riley began to pull away. Where other kids laughed and shouted, she was silent. Where others asked for attention, she hid from it. Her smile sometimes felt forced, like she was playing a role that didn't fit. And then came the internet. Comments about her weight, her looks, her style, sometimes cruel, sometimes careless. Who does she think she is? She's just riding her mom's fame. Words that cut deeper than anyone could see. At school, at home, everywhere she went, Riley felt the pressure. Not just to be perfect, but to be someone else's idea of perfect. That pressure built quietly, and the little girl inside began to shrink. This was the shadow Riley lived in. A world where her own voice was drowned out by expectations. But this is only the beginning of her journey. Because sometimes, the darkest shadows teach us how to find the brightest light. Silence isn't always empty. Sometimes, it's full of words that are too heavy to say. For Riley, that silence spoke volumes. But no one was listening. When Riley didn't answer questions, or stayed quiet in the crowd, many thought she was shy or aloof. Some even said she was spoiled or didn't care. But they didn't see the storm inside. The fear of being misunderstood. The struggle to find a safe place to just be. Even with friends around, Riley felt alone. Because she wasn't just a girl trying to fit in. She was the daughter of Kandi Burruss. And that came with invisible walls. Walls built by strangers' expectations. And the constant feeling that her true self wasn't enough. It wasn't that her family didn't love her. They did, fiercely. But sometimes love wasn't loud enough to reach inside her quiet. In moments when Riley needed to speak, she chose silence instead. Because silence felt safer. But Kandi saw the signs. She saw the way Riley's eyes would look away. The way she held herself back. She heard the unspoken words beneath the quiet. Kandi knew this silence wasn't just teenage moodiness. It was a silent cry for help. A heart waiting to be heard. The silence nobody heard was the loudest sound in Riley's world. And it was the first step on a path. That would change everything. Because sometimes, healing begins in the quiet. Sometimes, love doesn't shout. Sometimes, it whispers in the quiet moments. In the gentle look, the soft touch, the steady presence. For Kandi Burruss and her daughter Riley, love was that quiet force holding them together. Kandi didn't rush to fix things she couldn't see. Instead, she watched and listened. She noticed the small signs. How Riley would hesitate before speaking. How she sometimes pulled away when cameras were around. She understood that forcing words or answers wouldn't help. What Riley needed was space. Space to feel safe. Space to grow. There were quiet talks late at night. Just the two of them, away from the world. Sometimes Kandi would simply sit beside Riley, offering comfort without pressure. Other times she would share her own stories. Her fears, her doubts, her dreams. Showing Riley she wasn't alone. Kandi's love was steady, never demanding. She believed that confidence could not be forced. It had to be nurtured. And so she guided Riley gently, encouraging her to explore her own path. Without the weight of expectations, that quiet love became a safe harbor for Riley. Slowly she began to trust. Trust in herself, trust in her mother's support. Trust that she could find her own voice. It wasn't a sudden change, but a steady growth rooted in love and patience. In a world that often demands noise and action, Kandi showed that sometimes, the strongest love is the love that waits, watches, and whispers. I'm here. I see you. I believe in you. Growing up in the spotlight isn't like growing up anywhere else. For Riley Burruss, childhood was a battlefield, caught between the innocence she deserved and the fame she inherited. On one side, she was just a kid who wanted to laugh, play, and be carefree. On the other hand, she was Kandi's daughter, a title that came with cameras, critics, and constant attention. She felt the pull of both worlds, but neither seemed to fully accept her. The internet was unforgiving. Comments about her weight, her clothes, her every move piled up like stones on her shoulders. Every negative word chipped away at her confidence. making her question who she really was beneath the spotlight's glare. Being on The Real Housewives of Atlanta meant living life on display. Every smile was scrutinized, every tear magnified. Privacy was a luxury she rarely had, and the pressure to perform, to be perfect, was relentless. But through it all, Kandi did everything she could to shield Riley. She fought off the negativity, stood up for her daughter, and reminded her that her worth wasn't measured by public opinion. Still, the battle took its toll. Riley wrestled with balancing childhood innocence and the harsh realities of fame. Some days it felt like the scales would tip too far, and she'd lose herself completely. This was the fight Riley faced every day, to hold on to who she was inside, while the world tried to define her. But every battle has a turning point, and Riley's was coming. Sometimes, the hardest step is simply to speak. For Riley, finding her voice wasn't just about words. It was about reclaiming herself. After years of silence and self-doubt, there came a moment when Riley decided she wouldn't hide anymore. She wanted to be heard, not as someone else's daughter, but as her own person. Kandi was there every step of the way. With gentle words and unwavering support, she encouraged Riley to express herself, to share her feelings, her dreams, her struggles. She reminded Riley that her voice was powerful, that it mattered, and that speaking her truth was the first step to freedom. Riley began to open up, first in small ways with trusted friends and family, then in bigger ways through social media, interviews, and public appearances. Each time she spoke, her confidence grew stronger. Finding her voice changed everything. It gave Riley control over her story. It let her rewrite the narrative that others had tried to write for her. And most importantly, it helped her heal. From the quiet little girl who once felt invisible, Riley had become a young woman who was proud, strong, and heard. Her voice wasn't just words. It was her power. Being a mother in the spotlight isn't easy. For Kandi Burruss, protecting her daughter's heart meant learning lessons no one teaches you. Lessons about love, sacrifice, and strength. Kandi knew the bright lights of fame could both shine and burn. She wanted Riley to have the best of both worlds, to chase dreams without losing herself. But that balance was fragile, and sometimes it felt impossible to hold. Kandi's greatest job wasn't managing a career. It was shielding Riley's heart from the noise, the judgment, the pressure. She learned when to step in and when to step back, when to speak up and when to listen, all to give Riley the space to grow strong on her own terms. Fame made their journey different, but the core was the same as any mother and daughter. Unconditional love, patience, belief. Kandi's story isn't just about celebrity. It's about a mother's fierce determination to raise a daughter who knows her worth. Their journey shows us that behind every headline, behind every camera, there is a real family, with real struggles, real love, and real hope. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't fame or fortune. It's the love that helps us become who we truly are. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a girl who grew up in the spotlight. It was about a mother who chose love over pressure, and a daughter who found strength in her silence and turned it into power. Riley Burruss didn't become confident because of cameras. She became confident in spite of them, because behind her was a mother who saw her pain and stood by her, quietly, fiercely, always. And maybe that's the real legacy, not fame, not fortune, but the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter, who walked through fire together and came out shining.